Has anyone ever told you that you need to develop presence as an introvert? And you start questioning, what does that mean? When you think of presence, what's the first word that pop up into your head? Right? Most people would think something along the lines of, maybe you're just sitting there. Maybe presence means just the way I am, my body. But today I want to break down for you some behaviors that you can adopt and utilize in your daily life that can help you develop more presence so that people can approach you as you expect them to. Stay to the end because that last one is the best one. Let's get into it. Now, that first one is the vocal command that come out of your voice. What does vocal command mean? Meaning for myself, I grew up kind of non-social. I used to speak way too fast. I still do sometimes. But it's like when I do speak, I have this thing that I was diagnosed with growing up called process speed mismatch, meaning that whenever I speak, my mind thinks faster than the words that come out of my mouth. So I have to pay attention to what I say consciously, slow down, put my words back so others can understand me. Which is why nowadays I try not to get too excited, too overly emotional. Otherwise, whenever I speak, my voices just come out kind of like a jumble and flow. But for you, to help you develop that presence for others and to help you develop a more meaningful conversation, if that's you, and whether it's in a conversation, a meeting, or a conference, try to slow down what you're saying and mean what you say. A good little suggestion that I learned a long time ago when I was part of a Toastmasters conference or a meeting was to actually speak a little bit lower and try to enunciate the words more. Meaning that when you speak, try to kind of enunciate the ending of a word a little bit longer than you should in order for that word to kind of last a lot longer in a conversation. Now, if you need to also, when you're in a conversation, let's say that maybe you're speaking to like a group of people in a conference room or you have a group of friends. Something you can do is speak a little bit louder to get your point across so everyone can hear you. Because if you speak low, which I tend to do myself some as well, because of a force of habit. But when you're around a group of people, you can speak a little bit louder in order to get your point across so others can hear you as well. And also, try to pause. Because when you pause sometimes when you say things, people can kind of lean in to see what you're saying. That also will help you out. But this next one is something that most people tend to not really pay attention to as much, but it's very valuable. That next one is body language. For many people, probably like yourself as an introvert, you kind of tend to have close off body language because sometimes you just don't understand what you need to do to have others speak to. If you're more of a social person or you try to be, right? Just by nature, your body language may be more closed off, meaning your arms are crossed. Maybe your shoulders like folded in, kind of like this. And it kind of, not kind of, but it's detracting away from where you could be. But a way for you to kind of fix this, for example, stand tall, lean back, poke your chest out, roll your shoulders back, and just look people in the eyes when you speak to them. I know sometimes people don't really understand eye contact because for some people it's weird, but a way for you to do this is maybe if you don't look at people directly in the eyes, you can look at them in between the eyes or go from the nose and go between the eyes and the nose. And if you have to think about something, take a second to actually look away to not seem as awkward. Just take a second, look away, think for a moment what you want to say, and then look at them back in between the eyes or at the nose, which would make it more normal. Because if you don't, then it'd be kind of weird if you just stare at them in the eyes the whole time, right? Next one is whenever you do those hand arm gestures, similar to how I'm doing now, don't have your hands going everywhere all over the place. Try to keep them slow, deliberate, 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 God, deliberate, and make them make sense. Don't just make random hand arm gesture that you believe is the correct one. If you don't need to use them, then just put your hands down and just talk with your mouth. But if you need to describe a point or you use it as a way to kind of emphasize your points, use them, but use them sparingly to make a point. And this last one is something that a lot of people don't do, meaning that they just kind of speak, but they don't really pay attention to what they're actually saying, which is why I'm a big fan of verbal precision, meaning that you actually pay attention to what others say and pay attention to the words that come out their mouth. Because most people nowadays, I'm not saying it's you, right? But a lot of people tend to kind of talk back and forth with words that they don't really understand that they're using based on what they heard others say. But if you ask them to define what that word means, or ask them what that word means to them, they actually don't know. They'll give some kind of far off response. A way for you to kind of improve your precision of language and also maybe improve your sense of intelligence or your IQ, right? Is for you to define what words mean. For myself, I live or I try to see things from the observable reality, right? For example, when you think of charisma, what do you think of? Different behaviors that make up that word. People think of charisma like the overall term of it, but if you think the behaviors under it and you think of that big word, all those behaviors, as long as you kind of practice those consistently, will make up the overall word. And then one day you wake up and some way, somehow you have charisma. Same thing like that. As long as you try your best to think about words that people say and use words to yourself that actually make sense, that you actually know what they mean, that you actually know what they mean, instead of you just saying words that you believe you think you know what they mean, then your conversation, maybe your life, maybe your job life, work life, whatever, your career life will be a little bit easier because you're able to get ahead of people who don't see things that way. Get ahead of people who kind of don't pay attention to the nuances of things. But that's all I got. Thanks for listening.